get my notes up on my phone in front of me, because that's how I do it. And we shall try again. Hopefully there's no gremlins. So Esther K, thank you for coming on to an outside looking in podcast with me.
For having me.
Oh no! Thank you. Yeah. So I mean, first of all, we're for anybody watching. This is the second time we've attempted this.
Yeah.
The first time there was a power cut.
Yeah.
We were just talking about the fact I was really pleased there was a power cut, because I ate some raw fish, as in sushi. But like I was telling you on the DM, this was real. It was basically steaks of salmon and tuna, and I wasn't in a very good way when we tried to do it last time. I was still sweating.
It was your first time having sushi. I was like, did he know sushi was raw fish?
No, yeah. So like I was saying before, like I was saying before, I love sushi. I love it, but I've never had there was a bit where I was feeling a bit queasy when I was eating it, because I was like, this isn't just a thin slice of salmon. This is literally a whole salmon that's just been sort of cut into. But it's good for you, and I'm trying to lose some weight, as we were just talking about, and that's what we're going to get onto eventually. First of all, though, I'll sort of explain how I've ended up with yourself, because, your profile is that you are a political commentator. You go on to Sky News, you go into GB News, you're an author, you've got a blog and everything. And I'm just some sort of ex-Matlow from the Royal Navy that I've just left. And I don't know, I think I would have come to people's attention because I did a tweet that went viral, basically explaining that the day that I left, I just sort of did a thank you tweet explaining that when I joined up at 31, that's when I went into the careers office. They took a chance on me because I'd not been in trouble for about 9 years, something like that. But before that, I had 42 convictions by the time I was 21. I was a drug addict for a while, including heroin and crack. I was homeless for absolutely years. So yeah, when I did that tweet, that went viral, and then I saw that you were following me and sort of cheekily inboxed you and said, why is somebody like you following me? You said good content, which really cheered me up.
Yeah,
great content.
Honestly, it's refreshing. I mean, it's something different. I why not?
Yeah, and then from there, I've been following your Twitter, which we were talking about beforehand. That I'm fairly new to Twitter, and it's an awful place sometimes, Twitter. And
it is.
I follow your Twitter, and like we were saying, I what I've noticed about Twitter, which is really interesting, is that when I put that tweet, I attracted lots of new followers who then sort of found out about my post. But most of the followers on my Twitter, I would say, are right of center. There were a few total right wingers ended up on it, and I saw their profiles, and they were pure racists and stuff. And I, being the way I am, I started having a bit of fun with them, and like just saying, like, I'm not sure you've checked my profile properly or seen my picture properly before you've added me and that. And I got rid of a few. But on the whole, my Twitter followers seem to be center of right. My personal life, most of my friends are center of left. So I find that really interesting. And then we were saying this about Twitter would have you thinking that everybody that isn't the same politically absolutely despises each other, which in real life, I don't think that's true at all.
That's not true at all. And I was saying that I have friends that I disagree with on a lot of things, and even some of the people I do shows with, like Ben and stuff, we don't agree on like virtually everything, but he's amazing, and people generally don't believe me. And I was like, you can have friendships and good relationships with people you don't agree with. That's called life. That's what makes life interesting. Why would I want to be friends with someone that agrees with me on everything? Then they're just like a sycophant, really.
Well, and also, yeah, if you're going through life and all of your friends are exactly the same as you, that's quite boring. Do you know what I mean? It's a bit sad. And
you don't sort of broaden your horizons. And
that's bad. Yeah. I think for myself as well, because I did a few things which so when I was 21, I volunteered in Africa, and I went away with a lot of they were gap year students, and a lot of them were privately educated and posh, for want of a better word, and wealthy. Some of them really, really wealthy. And again, politically, they're completely different from me because their lives are different from me. So they don't lean left because they haven't got any idea of what sort of poverty is, and that's not their fault, and that's not bad. It's not good or a bad thing. It's just the way that things have turned out. So yeah, so
you often find, like Bristol, the university I went to, there were loads of middle class kids, privately educated, very wealthy, and they're the ones that wanted to tear down capitalism, and their take on their sort of obsession with left-wing politics was so skewed and so outside the realm of reality that a traditional working class person would be like, yeah, but you're not really left, are you? And that's the kind of faction of left-wing political activists that have taken over the Labour Party. People that don't really have a clue how normal people live.
Well,
it's ironic to me.
Well, I'm so when you I said this to Desmond Swain as well. So Desmond Swain, because I did a podcast with him, and that was about voter apathy and the fact that I don't vote. So I'm not political in the sense that I don't vote. That's not to say that I don't pay attention to what's going on politically. It's just that we were saying this before. I've now got to the stage where I'm completely politically homeless, and that's because the left aren't the left that I grew up with. Even the left that I grew up with, when I sort of tell my left-leaning friends that I don't vote and they say I should vote Labour because Labour would stop some of the things that bother me in life, like, homelessness really bothers me because I was homeless for so long, so that makes sense. But then I point out to them that my entire time homeless, the worst years of my life were all under a Labour government. Yeah. So I point that out to them, and then at the same time I look at the right, the sort of conservatives, especially at the moment, we've got this... we've basically got a class from Eton that have ended up running the country, and they're just schoolmates.
Conservative themselves. That's the irony. It's funny you should mention that, because I remember reading a book, and it was talking about sort of how one of the main criticisms leveled at sort of the main US political parties in the 1920s and 30s was the fact that both parties looked the same. So you couldn't really differentiate between the Democrats and the Republicans. And I would argue that is very similar now as well. The only difference is, I think, the part of the Labour Party that has really taken a stronghold are the radical, very left-wing, sort of identity politics obsessed lot. But really, you could exchange people like Rishi Sunak and parts of Boris's cabinet for Blair's government in the early 2000s, and there's really not much of a difference. And the reason why there's not because I'm a conservative and I want to see conservative. I mean, that's nice, I guess, but there is no real opposition. And fundamentally, I would rather have an opposition, natural opposition, that maybe I don't agree with, but that represents parts of people of this country, like yourself, who feel politically homeless, that are traditionally left-wing parties, than have these sort of mishmash of, whack-a-mole politicians that just do whatever they think will catch on. I mean, look at Keir Starmer. He's refusing to define what a woman is, and when he's defining what a woman is, you could literally exchange his definition for a kumquat, and it's the same thing. Because it has to be a difference.
We are going to get onto that. Again, that some of the names that you come out with there, I wrote down a list of some of the politicians that have been around recently. And again, it's from both sides. It's from all sides for me. So I was reading off the names of, like, Keir Starmer, who for me, I'm like, what does he do? He does nothing. Diane Abbott, just an absolute. I listen to some of the stuff she says, and I'm just amazed. Boris Johnson, do you know what I mean? Just a complete mercenary that seems to be in it for himself. I look at people like Ed Miliband, Theresa May, just people that are just really, I don't know if this is the right term to use, but wet. And I was
just about to say that. I was just about to say it's a bit of a wetty, isn't it?
They're wet, and I look at them and I think, God, if you grew up where I grew up, we would, you'd get chased out of our estate. Like, I mean? You would, you'd be terrified. They're the type of people that would be terrified to go out, and that's the environment that we had to grow up in. So yeah, politically homeless, completely. We are going to talk about, because this is what I saw you getting some grief about, and I thought actually that's quite an interesting subject for me, bearing in mind what I'm going to go on and do, and how, part of the way that I sorted my life out was by getting fit in my mid-20s. I found boxing training and things like that, and that as soon as I got fit, a lot of other things improved. But we can't avoid the elephant in the room. So recently on your Twitter, you're in a war of words, and not just yourself, a lot of people are, a lot of women are, and that's about the trans issue, which I think, it's always been an issue, as in, over the last few years, it's been quite a prominent thing in the news. But since Leah Thomas, since she won the
before.
So first of all, I've got no qualms with calling Leah Thomas a she. I've got no qualms with accepting that Leah Thomas has transitioned to a female and now wants to live as a woman. That doesn't bother me in the slightest. However, I'm a man, so it doesn't affect my life at all. You know what I mean? It does. You know, I can't help but not.
I mean, I think part of the reason why that tweet went viral is because I said the quiet part out loud. I completely agree with you. I was very happy, and I still am, to be polite and call people by their pronouns if they want to, and all of these things. But I think I've come to the realization that the people that were so happy to give respect to, there's a good chunk of them that are raging misogynists. And we're actually seeing that with the whole Leah Thomas. And I'll be honest, I don't have a problem that Leah Thomas won the NCAA swimming championship.
No, so I do, and I will say that.
I have a problem that women competed.
Yeah. Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And that's the difference I make. I don't have a problem because Leah Thomas was technically allowed to compete because the morons that let her compete said, actually, we ban all athletes from taking drugs, but you can take all the anti-testosterone and all the hormones, you can chock full up of all the drugs that you need to kind of give you some sort of semblance of equality with the women you're competing with, and then smash them anyway. And that's what I have a problem with. The people making the rules I call it the patients are running the asylum.
Yeah. So for me, I'm, you know, like I was saying, I've got absolutely, and it's something that I'm learning on a job kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? You know, this whole, because it's new. And what I was thinking earlier is actually, you know, when sort of homosexuals became open about it, sort of in the sort of, but for me, around the 80s, you know, it became okay for gay people to come out and say they were gay. They got a lot, you know, of persecution, and I'm absolutely, someone's sexuality is of no concern to me whatsoever. I don't want to be a cliche and say I've got gay friends, but I have got gay friends, and it's no big deal. And in the forces now, you know, we serve with gay people. Nobody's bothered. Nobody in their right mind these days is bothered about somebody's sexuality. But at one point, you know, people were being persecuted. So I'm aware that even though I don't understand trans issues, I don't want to be sort of going down the same route that happened to gay people. And then, you know, years from now, we look back and we're full of regret because we realize we were wrong. With the sports, that's different because I'm sporty myself. I like to compete. You know, we were just talking off air. I've got a sort of charity fight coming up, and I've done boxing training since my mid-20s. Especially at the very top level, I can't accept that somebody can go through puberty as a man and come out of it with a man's body, transition to a woman, live as a woman, absolutely fine, but then compete against sort of biological females, because it's just, from a sporting perspective, it's just not fair. And that's the top and bottom of it. And that's the only real issue I have. And then from there, I was sort of following your Twitter, and I was a bit vocal about that. I got called far right straight away. You know, somebody said, "Oh, somebody said you're far right," and I actually challenged them and said, "How does that make me far right?" And what they said was that because I was thinking something that somebody on the far right also thinks, that automatically makes me far right. What I then said back, but I didn't get an answer, was I think far more stuff left wing. Does that not make me left wing?
What does it mean anymore?
But we were saying this, you know, Twitter's not real, and
it's not, but it's a fairly decent microcosm. I mean, I completely respect sort of your stance in the sense that you're a man, so these things don't affect you, and I get that. And I think, in a way, I would lay this at the feet of feminists. We've kind of shot ourselves in the foot a little bit here, because on the one hand, we're saying, "Oh, our body, our rights, our body, our choice. Men can't have an abortion, even though it takes two people to make a baby." But on this case, we're like, "Oh, where are all the men speaking out?" It's like, well, you can't really have that. So fine, I can accept that. I think the issue here is it's not just about sort of men, trans women, biological men in women's sports. It's far more far-reaching than that. I don't know if you heard the story about the lady on the NHS hospital ward that was raped. It was an all-women's ward, but there was a trans woman there, a biological male, who raped a woman. And the hospital tried covering it up because it wasn't comfortable to talk about, or politically correct.
Yeah.
And these instances have happened in women's only prisons, where biological men identify as women and go into women's only prisons. These have happened with biological men going into women's toilets. and using them. And if you know, I don't expect a man to understand this, but a woman's toilet is a very intimate space. And because female, our biology is so different to a man's biology, there are things that we know about ourselves in that space that makes it uncomfortable, and there's a biological male there. One instance of rape or an assault by someone who's using this blanket movement to try and come into women's spaces is more than enough. And
do you know what though? I'm good because I have to play devil's advocate. I have to say back there, you know, is that not tarnishing the whole trans sort of community?
It's not. It's
you know
not.
I mean? Because you're saying it's not though, but is that not the same as me sort of? You know, obviously this is hypothetical, but you know, and this happens. You know, sort of saying that all black people are criminals because you know a black person mugged somebody in an area. Do you know what I mean? So yeah. I just
that's not the instant. That's not the issue here, because black people are not predisposed to commit crime. A biological man, 99% of the population of 99% of the male population are attracted to women. That is a fact. And most men are biologically predisposed to want to have sex with men. If you're looking at statistically, on the most violent, in terms of violent behavior on the spectrum, the most violent is biological men. That's why they take up the most in prisons. This is not to say, and this is the thing, because what exactly is race? It's skin color, it's different sort of facial features and all of that. But at the end of the day, there's only one race, the human race. But in the human race, there are males and females, and mammals have had to rely on this dichotomy, this sexual dichotomy, to procreate and to reproduce, and that's a biological fact.
What does dichotomy mean? I've never heard that word before.
Basically, two, split in two. So
right, okay.
I think my issue here is the fact that these are all the concerns that women are putting forth, and the fact that they're not being addressed with any sort of seriousness, the fact that effectively our politicians have been neutered to the point that they're even refusing to define what half the population they want to govern is a big problem, because it's a deep
well, what I don't like the idea. So one, I don't like the idea of trans people being sort of persecuted for something that they will say is a natural thing. But what I'm also really uncomfortable with is when women come out and speak against it and say that they don't like it, and they're told to shut up, because then I just think right, what's going on now is, are we now saying that women's rights that they fought so long to have are now, you know, defunct? They can't speak about this. And it's like what you said. I hate this whole
this is the thing.
Too scared to talk about things.
Because at the end of the day, this is how it
just broke up.
And
Esther, you just broke up a little bit there, just when I finished speaking. Can you hear me? Yeah, I can hear you now. I can hear you now.
Okay. This is my where I stand. I completely recognize that there are trans people that just want to live their lives and be left alone, and I genuinely believe the overwhelming majority. However, like most of our politics, it's been hijacked by a small vocal minority of people that are bigoted and genuine predators. I genuinely believe that. The conversation needs to move here. You are a trans woman or trans whatever for a reason. That's what the word trans means. You're transitioning from one to the other. I will never believe that a biological man can be a woman, because I don't think a woman is a feeling, right? There's no justification that they give me that satisfies me. That biology comes down to your chromosomes, whether they like it or not. However, I can respect whatever pronouns or whatever they choose to use, insofar as they understand that their rights ends where ours begins. So if you identify as a trans woman, that's fine. But if women are saying you cannot use women's toilets, women's spaces, you cannot come into women's prisons, right? Not because we believe all of you are predators, but one is enough. One is more than enough, right? Then you should, just as we have fought for your right to identify how you wish and to live your life how you want to, you should give us the same courtesy and respect our freedom above everything else, and say, actually, for the sake of the over 50% of the population that don't feel comfortable, we will respect them in this way. That's how it goes. Respect is two ways. Because if that's not the case, then all courtesy, all politeness is off. I'm sorry, I'm not playing that game anymore. This is why I created this to meme called Angry Blokes in Wigs, because that was my DMs. My DMs was full of angry blokes in wigs that had nothing to say about that woman that was raped on the NHS hospital ward, but are happy to insult me and tell me to kill myself because I'm not calling Tony Tonya.
Yeah, right. So, okay. I think you got that.
I'm sorry.
No. Listen, even if I don't agree with some of what you're saying, like we were saying, I'd never say that people aren't allowed to say something, and I don't think anybody's got a right to go through life thinking that they're gonna not be offended, etc.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I just so I get it. And what I will say is that actually it was on your Twitter. I think maybe it was you that commented, and I know this is a real man thing to do, but I would somebody said to me, would I mind if a trans person used the same toilet as me? And then I can only look at that from my perspective, which is a male perspective. So if a female to male was to use the same toilet as me, it wouldn't bother me at all. But then and I think you were actually talking to me, such a male thing that I'm going to say, but you said I'd be really uncomfortable changing my tampon or something, knowing that there was and when you mentioned tampon period, I just went, I'm out. This is not my gig. This is not my gig. And then afterwards I was actually thinking about it, and I thought, actually, you know what, this is this for me now, I think this is a problem that it's a woman's problem. It's not really. I can have every opinion in the world, but
in men's sports.
You what? Sorry.
How many trans men are in men's sports? Like how often do you hear of a trans man?
Yeah. I mean, and this is where I won't sit on the fence with this, and I know that I'll probably cop a bit of grief, but and it really is specifically about sports. I saw Fallon Fox, I think her name is. She transitioned to a woman, but was a cage fighter, and I believe I'm not sure if it was Marines, but I believe was fractured somebody's skull, and the strength was different. The sort of biological female that she fought, said that she'd never felt strength like that. She couldn't say for sure whether it was because Fallon was born as a male, but look, I will say that that's what it was. Leah Thomas can't go from the 500 best sort of male swimmer in the country to the first. So in that, and it's not. And the thing is, I do want to point out that this is. I think the sports thing, this Leah Thomas thing, when you've got Kylie Jenner speaking up, when you've got Martina Navratilova come out, even though she's not trans, she's part of the LGBT community, she's come out and said this is wrong. Blair White, I follow her on Twitter.
No, but look at it this
way. Caitlyn
way.
Jenner came straight out and said this is unfair.
Right? You've boxed for years.
I know how to box, but I'm not very good, and I wouldn't say I've boxed.
You're familiar with it, right?
You're gonna get me called out and beat up by people that can box much better than me, Esther. So,
no.
I that's how I do I train by sparring with my friends, etc. But saying I've sparred girls, but it is only sparring, and I wouldn't be comfortable.
Yeah, but imagine if Tyson at his peak became put on a wig, shaved legs or waxed or whatever, put on some lipstick and said I'm Michelle, and decided to box against men. We'd be dead. One good solid punch is all it would take for Mike Tyson to murder a woman.
Yeah. No, with the sports thing, I don't sit on the fence. I don't think that somebody that was, I don't understand enough about the science, but from what I read, if you go through puberty as a male,
why is the sports thing different to women's spaces?
Because I understand. You mean for me? Because I understand the sports thing. That's how I can sort of get.
Okay.
I don't understand.
If you're not a woman, you can't necessarily relate to the whole bathroom.
Yeah,
thing.
Do you know what I mean? So I can only.
I've spoken to men who are fathers of daughters.
Yeah.
And the idea that their daughters, their teenage daughters, would go into a bathroom and see a fully grown man, regardless of how he's dressed, sharing their space, or in a women's prison with biological men there, or even in a women's hospital with biological men on the wards, fills them with utter horror. And I think that's something maybe you have to be a father to understand. But I'm not even a mother, and the idea just fills me with absolute horror.
Well, I am a father, and I've got a little girl as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've got a little girl as well. It's something that I'd have to think about. Do you know what I mean? It's only now that you've mentioned it that I've started thinking about it. I will say that the younger generation, they seem to be a lot more. I'm saying the younger generation. I don't know how old you are. You're probably far younger than me and part of this younger generation that I'm talking about. But yeah, no, I get it. And what I will say is it's a legitimate conversation that needs to be had, and it needs to be had out in the open, and it needs to be had without fear of everybody being shouted down if they say something that somebody else doesn't want to hear. And I think we were talking about this on the previous one. I find it bizarre to think that I came into this thinking, I hope I don't fucking say something that gets me in a lot of trouble. And, you know, I know that I will end up in more trouble by coming out with an opinion that somebody doesn't like than I will about the fact that I come from a background where I've got 42 criminal convictions and there's victims to every single one of those crimes. Do you know what I mean? So that sort of doesn't get held against me. If anything, it gets celebrated that I've come from that and I've ended up in a good place. But I mean, it's not relevant because there wasn't Twitter, but I see it now. You know, if an opinion that I had back then was wrong to what somebody thinks now, there's a whole group of people on social media that will say he's not allowed to earn a living, he's not allowed to do this, he's not allowed to go and work with young offenders, do you know what I mean, to try and make a difference and stuff because he said something that upset me, and I find that utterly bizarre. So we'll move on from that, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Because that isn't genuinely what I wanted to talk to you about. But it was actually a friend of mine yesterday was saying, you know, he was interested to see what you had to say. I don't know if you saw me sort of having a bit of a debate with him.
Yeah, it was quite interesting watching that exchange, because this is the thing. I think a lot of people are just waking up, which is all I need. I just need people to wake up, because I never thought we'd get back to this point where women were being so blatantly ignored on things that we actually have evidence of, that there's foul play here. But I think most people, and again, that's our tendency. You just want to be respectful, live and let live. And I think that's been most people's doctrines. Even you were saying it, you know, you just think, yeah, I have no problem with trans people, like I have no problem with gay people, just live and let live. But there are actual real world implications. And I think there's just a complete fallacy going on here. But that's on another side of things. But yeah.
Right. Anyway, what we were actually going to talk about is obesity and poverty. The link between obesity and poverty, because you put some posts up about that, and I think you sort of copped a bit of heat from people.
I always catch heat. If you're on my Twitter, just, you know, follow at your own. You have been warned.
Listen, I catch heat as well, and I think I'm pretty sound, to be honest. I don't know why I catch heat, but I do. But it was one of them things that, obviously, you know, being completely honest, when I'd seen it, you follow me, and the fact that I already do these podcasts, you know, I couldn't help but think, oh, it'd be good to do a podcast with a, you know, somebody that's on Sky News and GB News and everything. But when I saw that is a subject that's sort of close to my heart, really, because like I was saying, one, I grew up very poor. So, two, I'm naturally an addict, so I'm in recovery from alcohol, and I see a lot of, when I've been doing some reading up on it, I see a lot of the behavioural patterns regarding food amongst poor people, exactly the sort of same patterns that, you know, those of us that aren't having the greatest of times also have with drugs and alcohol. So there's a big part of me that thinks that it's habitual. And also, I love stats, me, and you can't deny that there is a link between poverty and obesity. What I will say is that it's a fairly recent phenomenon, and the same foods that we blame for people from the lower classes being obese, those foods have been around for longer than what this has been a problem. So it's not just so part of me was thinking, is it just the foods that we now have in the supermarkets, etc.? And that's not the case, because these foods have been around for ages. But what is it you actually tweeted? What is it you were actually saying, and what is it that you got thrown back at you?
There was this sort of jeans brand that have created a kind of jeans for women. I don't even know how to describe this body part, because it's so grotesquely abnormal and such a sign of a terrible, terrible diet. But it's basically like, you know, when it's like a growth. I don't know how to describe it. Basically, when someone's so massive that their stomach is like to their knees.
There's a name for it.
Something like that.
There's a name for it. Yeah, there's something like that.
And it was basically like, you know, what we've seen in the kind of trend we've seen with fashion brands
celebrating
inclusive, but then also like including like obese models and saying, you know, these bodies are valid. It's like, no one's saying they're valid. One, we don't want to see them, and two, they're not healthy. And I said the quiet part out loud, because not only did I find that grotesque, it actually categorically is grotesque. Like, human beings have evolved to not actually find that sort of thing attractive.
Oh no! Listen, hey, Esther, I know a few lads that.
Oh, that's a fetish.
I know a few lads that like is it a fetish? They just like the big girls. You know what I mean? So,
and the reason why it is a fetish is because most men. This is the thing, when people say, "Oh, I know men that like that." No. Look at the top 10% of men in terms of. No. Hold on. Look at the top segment society and get the top 10% of men economically. So in terms of net worth, what kind of women do those men routinely choose? Because if you look at it sort of in terms of status and dating, men that have a certain amount of tend to have the most advantage, the highest advantage when it comes to dating. Obviously, you need charisma and confidence and charm and stuff like that. But if you're a broke man and confident, it's a lot easier if you're a rich man and confident. So if you look at the people that are at the top of the effectively dating pool in terms of what women actually want, and they could easily select what they want, they never go for women that look like buildings with feet, for lack of a better term. No, I'm sorry, it's true. It's true. You can have a fetish if you're a broke man, especially if your fetish is for something that nobody else wants, on average. I have never in my entire life seen wealthy actors, rich, influential people with these sorts of women that are, oh, maybe curvy, yeah. But, you know, I come from an African background. Most men in my background tend to actually like a bit more curvy women. But we're talking about obese.
Yeah, no. So, no, I agree. I don't like it that it sort of gets celebrated, and we get told that these women should be, or these men should be proud. Do you know what I mean? Because you're just saying women there, but actually there's lots of obese men.
This is the thing. There is no body positivity for men. Men across the board to women, men that are overweight across the board are just off-putting. Let me put it nicely. They're off-putting. There has been no progress on body positivity for men. However, if a woman is big, oh, you go girl, you love those stretch marks, those tiger marks, you smack. And I just think, what? And I get it, because obviously the burden of physical appearance and physical beauty is greater on women naturally.
Yeah.
Just how we've evolved. That's just what it is. But that doesn't negate the reality of the facts, which is men don't get the same leeway. I've never seen Calvin Klein put a two-ton woman off their billboard and call
2-ton man. You mean the 2-ton man?
Put 2-ton man.
Yeah,
exactly.
No, I agree. I was interested in the link to poverty, because there is a link to poverty. And like I was saying, were you saying that you don't understand the link to poverty, or the?
No. I was saying that I think the link is, I understand it, but I also say, okay, I was trying to give it from a different perspective. I grew up in Ghana. I moved. You
grew up where? Sorry, Ghana. Yeah.
Ghana, yeah, in West Africa. Ghana is significantly poorer than the UK. I lived there until I was 14, and really, I've only lived full time in the UK for the last 3 years. I used to go back and spend like 2 to 3 months back home every year. I don't think, if I took 100 people of the Ghanaian population and 100 people of the British population, I would see probably 2 to 3 times more overweight and obese people in the UK.
Yeah, right? So I've read about that. Yeah, it's a developed country phenomenon. Exactly. It's only in a developed country that we have these issues. So like, I mean, I see the link, and I understand that there's a link. I will say that I don't think that it can be an excuse forever. I think eventually, the onus, it's the same with any addiction, because I come from sort of addicts background. I know why I started taking drugs so young. I know why I ended up with such bad problems. It got to the point, the reasons why weren't important. I had to sober up. Do you know what I mean? So I can look back and say, yeah, well, I see this clip of Jimmy Carr recently where he said, when I forgot what it was, but he was just saying, when is the point that it doesn't matter about your past and things like that? And I see that with obesity as well. I understand why people from sort of poorer backgrounds find solace in food. I understand fully the pure lack of education about looking after your body in comprehensive schools and sort of lower class backgrounds. You got to contend with food deserts, the fact that there's lots of poor areas where, a supermarket where it's affordable to go and get healthy foods too far away. So people just take the easier option. What I will say is that it is the easier option, but being poor is hard. Being poor is harder than being rich. There's just no two ways about that. You could argue that the easy.
I'm glad you mentioned the education system, actually, because I actually level a lot of criticism at the education system in the sense that it doesn't actually prepare young people.
Prepares you for nothing.
Life. Yeah, no. Prepares you nothing. I mean, even honestly, unless you're studying accounting, there's no part of our education that teaches us about financial independence. There's no part of our education that teaches us how to be an entrepreneur. It literally prepares you to be a good employee. And guess what? We're moving into a different kind of world. Like, it doesn't teach you. I mean, I don't know a single person that's lost a job because they didn't know mitochondria was the powerhouse of the cell, which is like a meme that we say, because that was the most important thing you had to know in GCSE biology. Mitochondria.
So I mean, you lost me there. But what I will say is, you probably don't know this about me, but I never made it through school. I only had about a year and a half of senior education. I was expelled. Okay. I was excluded permanently by 14, and in that time, so from 12 to 14, I went to 5 different schools. I missed a good chunk, about 7 months of it. I think we worked it out. I got about 18 months of senior education before I completely, I was excluded permanently. I was always suspended. I was a terrible pupil. But I'm one of them. It's funny, when we were talking about it, I got nothing from school at all. From senior education, I got absolutely nothing from it. I could read and write to a very good level before I got to school. I could add up, subtract, divide, and multiply enough to get by, and that's pretty much what's got me through life. Other than that, I couldn't tell you a single thing that I learned in school that I've taken into adult life. And in fact, it was probably the lack of preparation, which, when I got made homeless at 16, because I hadn't been prepared for life at all, I failed miserably. And I was just, all I could do was take drugs and get into trouble, and it was just because I was so immature, emotionally, and I hadn't been prepared for life. Funnily enough, and I do think this did get me through, I cooked for myself from the age of 12 onwards. So and that was only because I was a pretty feral kid. So when I got home, a lot of the time nobody was in. So if I wanted to eat, I would have to cook myself some food. So I was cooking my own dinners and stuff, not all the time, but I knew how to cook. So I think that sort of got me by in life. But I think there's a lot of people, especially in the lower classes, that come out of school and they haven't been taught how to cook, and they haven't been taught the importance of looking after your body and what you benefit from it. And then my sort of theory is that, and this is just a theory, I was thinking about this earlier, with the fact that it's a fairly recent phenomenon. I think people are just quite miserable when they're poor anyway. But at the moment, these days, all we get, we really see everybody else's wealth. I say we, I'm not poor anymore, but when you're down there in general, through social media and everything, you see everybody living these absolutely fabulous lives and you're not, and it makes you a bit miserable. And then you seek solace in the things that, stop you feeling miserable for a bit, which is usually drugs, alcohol, and food. So,
Well, I think the thing is, because when I went to university, I kid you not, I knew people that used to warm milk in a kettle, right? I knew a kid whose mom bought him a book on how to make sandwiches. It's not really, modern education doesn't prepare you for anything.
No.
Anything. Really, you knew how to write and do some math, and I argue that's probably all you needed. Most of the richest people I know didn't even finish secondary school. I kid you not. And this is the thing we're not addressing. And we're actively lying to people. And I'm going to say lying to women as well, just because I know people will say, oh, it's not fair. It's like the burden of physical beauty lies more heavily on women. You can get a lot of advantages as being a beautiful woman, as in the same way you can have a lot of disadvantages by being an unattractive woman. Right? We're actively lying to women and saying, instead of saying, actually, you're eating your feelings, you're medically overweight, you should probably take better care of your body, you should probably take more pride in your appearance. We're saying, and these are where these campaigns are coming from. Oh, plus size is beautiful. Love your fat, your rolls, your stretch marks, and everything in between. If you stand next to your fridge and you're the same size, great. And it's not normal. And instead of telling people, but I'm going to say women in particular, to take care of yourselves, we're actually lying to them and saying the result of you not taking the action you should are beautiful, and that's not true, and that's unhealthy. And I mean, it's horrible. It's horrible.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like I will say, like I was just sort of saying earlier on our first attempt at this, I see the link. I understand it. I see that there's reasons that people from lower class backgrounds end up obese, but and it may be an unpopular thing to say. I don't think it's an excuse. It's like what I was just talking about there. I think at some point you have to just take responsibility for yourself. The trouble is once you end up obese, as not even obese, once you put a bit of weight on, it's to start with, it's real hard graft getting rid of it.
Yeah.
I'm training at the moment. I'm what I class as overweight at the moment, and the first month of it's awful. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm unfit, so everything's so much harder. But you do.
I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say it's easy. Like, I'm trying to, and I'm not overweight. I don't think in my life I've ever weighed more than 65 kilos, and I'm 5'5", so that's not too bad.
What's that in stone? I'm only an inch taller than you. So
I don't know, like probably 8 stone.
Right.
I've never been like particularly overweight in my life, but even
so is that not so? The thing though is sort of your lack of sympathy. Is it fair to say that you got a lack of sympathy?
I don't think it's a lack of sympathy, and this is the thing. Like, and this is something that often, whenever I say something that hits a nerve with people, they just level these criticisms like, you don't understand, you're like this, you're like that, and because people don't really know me very well, they don't know my background. I'm very private with my life. I say, yes, I moved to the country when I was 14. I moved from Ghana and all of these things. But because they don't actually know my experiences, they don't really know where I'm coming from with this. I'm not saying there's a lack of sympathy. I am saying, I get it, but you're being lied to. And at some point, you need to realize that you are really in it for yourself. I'm very adamant on making people understand that they need to cut out the white noise. Because whenever people come up to me and have these excuses, or they say, you don't understand, it's because of this, you don't understand because of that, I always try and question them and question where they get these ideas about their body from, or where they get these ideas about eating habits and how it's okay to do certain things. And it's always from Instagram, which is the ninth circle of hell, in my opinion. Awful. It's always from, oh, boss babe, boss bitch, you can be this, juicy, thick, all these like analogies that don't mean anything. And that's what we're so influenced by, what we see on social media. We have no idea. So for me, it's not about not having sympathy. I know it's hard. There's so many things that are hard, right? But I just want you to understand where your thinking is coming from, and how I think the most traumatizing thing you can say to someone is the world doesn't care about you. And it's true. Your family cares about you, your friends do, but the world as a whole, you're just a dollar sign. And that is both empowering and scary. Because if you say that to someone, you can say, you can remain how you are. I just want you to understand this perspective. And they'll sit down and think, there's actually no benefit to me, myself, to stay this way. And that's where the true motivation comes from.
Yeah. Do you think there's an argument that the government don't want? This goes back to a Tony Benn speech. You ever seen a Tony Benn speech where he was saying that the government don't want everybody to be healthy because then everybody starts voting, and they don't want that?
They don't want a society that's switched on. I mean, that's kind of like the motto of like conspiracy theories that always happen to somehow be right.
Is that a conspiracy theory though? And I'll tell you now, I'm just going to jump in now and say this. I used to mock all of my mates that had any kind of conspiracy theory. After the last 3 years, I don't do that anymore.
Absolutely. I've sent them flowers in a car. I'm sorry.
I keep my mouth shut and I just wait and see what's going to happen, because I'm like, I don't know who's telling the truth anymore.
Your crystal ball, which is your head.
So, yeah.
No, I mean, look, and again, people say I'm harsh, right? The Belgian health minister.
Excuse me.
She's massive. Right?
Hang on 2 seconds, Esther. You're just breaking up again. Esther, you got to Belgian health minister, and then the connection went a bit dodgy.
Yeah, the Belgian health minister. She's extremely obese. Our prime minister, he's been working out apparently for ages, even since COVID hit. Extremely big. We knew that when this pandemic hit, this was a fantastic opportunity for the NHS to, what I criticize, I always say the NHS is reactive, not proactive. It's like the black hole of public spending. It's just patchwork. I said, this is a fantastic opportunity. Encourage people to be fit, healthy, get in shape. It's a great health campaign you can be running here. No, they just told you to stay home. In the US, they were giving you Krispy Kreme donuts if you took the jab. I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
Do you know? I tell you, because so first lockdown and everything, I went along with everything. We didn't know what was going on. I wore my mask and everything like that. It might have been the third lockdown. I deployed. I went around the world. I had all my jabs, and then I came back and caught COVID. And when I went around the world, there was places where they wouldn't let us off the ship, even though we'd been jabbed, they still wouldn't. And I was like, what's the point of this? But I remember I was on a train, and even though I say that I'm sort of a bit overweight, even when I was, drinking quite heavily, I was still relatively fit. I would go to the gym here and there. I play football, go out, I'm in relatively good shape, and I try and take care of myself. And I remember there was a guy on the train, and he was very obese, and he was talking to somebody else. I was sat a few seats in front of him, and I wasn't wearing a mask. And he started moaning that there was lots of people on the train that weren't wearing a mask. And then he said, oh, you know, I just worry because I'm actually really vulnerable because I've already had 2 heart attacks from where I used to smoke 60 cigarettes a day. And there was a part of me that just thought, man, fuck you, man. Do you know what I mean? Like, why am I having to wear? You're angry with me for not wearing a mask because you used to smoke 60 cigarettes a day and you're obese. Like, there is a part of me that, so you know, I'm sort of saying to you, you know, are you unsympathetic? There's part of me that got unsympathetic. Do you know what I mean?
I'm completely unsympathetic. I would even go as far as saying I'm a bloody troll. I'm completely unsympathetic. And the reason why I am is because this is the thing, when you're talking about someone who's grown up out in effectively a developing country, there's no criticism, there's nothing you can level at me that's poverty related. I'm sorry, there isn't. I know more well-adjusted people that understand the basics of health that probably can't even write their name on a piece of paper that if you eat crap and don't move, you will get fat.
Yeah, but if you know, in your, you know, so where you come from, have your poor people only got access to high saturated frozen foods from Iceland? Do you know what I mean?
No. And that's another thing as well. Probably it's, you know, the kind of food we eat. We tend to eat a lot of fresher food. Refrigeration is, I mean, we salt a lot of our, like, we preserve our food by salting and curing.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I would bounce that back off you, so that I know what you're saying, and that it's poorer there than our poor people aren't as poor people in non-developed countries, but actually the food that you get to choose is fresher and healthier in the non-developed countries than it is here.
Yeah, I get that, but that's still not an excuse because there's a greater level of convenience here in the UK. If you want fresh, this is the thing, right? And it's all about food economics, and this is why I say our education system doesn't teach us anything. If you keep buying McDonald's or whatever every day, you spend about £5 to £10. That adds up. If you go to Sainsbury's and do a good shop, you get your veggies, you get some bread or whatever, you get some milk, you get eggs, you get sausage, you get whatever you need, like the basic good staples, like a bunch of greens and vegetables, and just make sure you fill your diet with things that are not overtly bad for you, right? Just high in fats, high in carbs, all of that. You're fine. It's really not very difficult.
Yeah, no, I do agree, and this is where sort of you know, like I was saying, I understand why there's a link, but at some point, I think you have to say, well, it is possible. It might be a little bit harder to start with, but it is actually possible to change those habits, and you don't have to go to Iceland. I'm saying Iceland. I don't want to get sued off Iceland. You don't have to go to a frozen food store and buy, you know, frozen preservative food, you know, just loaded with.
Sometimes the reason why I get frustrated is because there's a huge amount of. I often talk about the infantilization of the West, but there's a huge amount of mollycoddling and just really no common sense, really no tough love. Like, I'm sorry, this is something you should have learned at home because your parents should have taught you, because your parents should have been feeding you crap and then you've been fat since you were 10, right? And the reason why I go down this line of argument is because it all falls back to the government, which means it falls back to me, the taxpayer, because then we always have to talk about these programs. Like, and listen, the government is full of morons, but themselves are fat. Right, so this circle of people being lazy and people not teaching their kids right and people themselves not acting right and taking some sense of responsibility, and so you end up with a generation that thinks it's normal to be living off this fast food diet and everything, and then it all goes back to the government. Oh, what should we do? Because now we have all these obese people that are weighing down on the NHS, and I have to pay more taxes because of it. And then the obese fat people in government are saying, oh well, we just need more money from this person to do it. It's all a cycle of nonsense, right? There needs to be more tough love. There needs to be adults in the room. And people need to start taking responsibility for themselves. There's absolutely no reason why, I think it's 1 out of 3 or 4 kids now are overweight.
Yes, the numbers are pretty bad. 28% of England are obese. 3% are morbidly obese.
61% are overweight.
Weren't you saying that we're now on course so that this will be the first time the sort of poor people are?
Yeah, this is the only time in history where poor people are way more than richer people.
That's bizarre, isn't it? And then there's a million. Last year there was 1 million hospital admissions linked to obesity.
I mean, I'm sorry, that's most of the NHS spend. If you think about it, cardiac arrests, you know, illnesses linked to poor diets, diabetes, most of the NHS spend comes from lifestyle. If you think about it, we have it so good that we're not tackling diseases like malaria. We're not tackling diseases like cholera. We're tackling lifestyle-related diseases, smoking, drinking, eating crap. These are the things we're tackling. And everything is always a cycle. This is why I'm not an ideologue in the sense that I have, like, I wouldn't say I'm a staunch, like always right of center or right wing on certain things. I can be left wing on certain things as well. I think it's
what are you left wing on?
What am I left wing on?
Yeah, give me an example of something you're left wing on.
I think something like the welfare state, but again, I'm left wing, but I'm also very libertarian on it, and I'm very much economic focused as opposed to, I suppose, just like socialists in that sense. I do think there should be a safety net for people. I do like the idea of the NHS, but I also think that we should look at a more European style approach, because there's a psychology behind trading money. So for instance, every time you go to the doctor, for instance, if you pay 25 quid, but you get 22 pounds of it reimbursed, which is what happens in most European countries, it makes you think, actually, there's a cost attached to the service that I'm getting. When people just walk into the NHS and it's free, they don't have any responsibility of how they should act because it's something that is being paid for. They just think it's there, it's just a norm. But if you have a sense of sort of a psychological understanding of the value of the service you're getting, it makes you think, actually, I don't really want to trade £25 today, even though I'll go through the hassle of getting most of it back. Why don't I just eat better, go for walks, stretch, do some Pilates, do some yoga, drink some more tea, do all these things that are actually propping up my life. So probably cut back on the booze, only drink on the weekends, have a glass of wine here and there. There's a psychological shift that happens. And I when I lived in France, I realized that's very much an attitude that people have. Not because, they don't want to go to the doctor or they can't be bothered to exchange 22 euros, but because they understand the value of the service they're getting. And this is why satisfaction with healthcare as well, if you poll by country, is very high in places like France, because even though they do pay for it and they get reimbursed, they understand the value of what they're getting. People in the UK always slag off the NHS, and I do it as well because they're legitimate concerns, but because they don't understand the value of the service they're getting.
Yeah, I didn't know that about France. I don't really know much about the rest of the world, even though I've been all over it. Yeah, that's interesting. No, I can understand why. I can understand why that would work and why you would start sort of paying attention. If you're giving money, even though you're getting it back, you sort of see what it's costing.
Yeah, you see the value of it as well. And I mean, listen, if I ran this country, I think I would probably be the most loved and hated woman on the planet, because I would literally sack about 99% of the people at Westminster right now. I'm like, if you weigh over a certain amount, you can't come in. If you wear Crocs, I don't want to see you. You need to look like the society you want to represent.
So you know what? Yeah. So what's weird is that I've been in the forces for the last 13 years, and actually we get fitness tests. I think they're sort of easing it off now, but we get fitness tests, and when we do our fitness tests, we get measured up, and if your BMI is wrong, you get sent on a plan, and if you don't pass your fitness test, you get remedials and you get given a specific plan, and you're not supposed to be overweight in the forces. I'm not saying that it works, but the theory is that you're not. So I'm actually from a background where we're expected to be fit and we're expected to sort of look after ourselves a bit, which is why as much as I'm saying that I do understand the link, I'm very much, especially for your mental health, that's probably the first thing that I benefit from when I go and train is my mental health. The fact that once I'm fit and healthy, I feel much better. And I can really sort of look back at the period, because for the last, I'd say 6 years or so, I really got quite bad with the alcohol. And because I wasn't living very healthy, my mental health suffered really badly. And that's because I was just eating shit and drinking 2 or 3 bottles of red wine a night, which, you can't do that. And now that I'm looking after myself again.
Can I ask you a question? Have you seen any, I mean, from your personal experience, have you seen any downside to becoming, hitting the gym and getting your diet in order? Have there been any negatives to it? Because I can only see positives, really.
Have there been any negatives from hitting the gym and looking after myself? Oh, none at all. None whatsoever. No, none at all. And I would say this as well. Like I know that a lot of people say that well, gyms are expensive, etc. My 2 children are in a local boxing club now, which is just up the road from me. And you will find boxing clubs not far from most deprived areas. You will find a boxing club that isn't far. They pay £2 a session. They go 3 times a week, so it costs 12 quid. And 2 quid a session, and most boxing gyms as well will turn a blind eye to some of the kids if they haven't got 2 quid every time. you know, and that will keep you fit. Adults can go there. I could go along and train there for £2 if I wanted to. You know, I'll go out for a walk, you'll lose weight. It's sort of, it is easier when you've got money. Do you know what I mean? Which is what's happening with me at the moment. I'm sort of I'm paying a personal trainer. I went for breakfast this morning. I had a really healthy breakfast. It cost me £12. Do you know what I mean? When I was poor, £12 was, you know, almost a week's shop back in the 90s. So I do get it. But yeah, there are ways to keep fit and eat healthier. So as much as I play devil's advocate and I know that there's a link, I am very, very sort of vocal on the fact that you should look after yourself, because good things come from it. And if you look after yourself, not just physical and mental, usually, I don't know, I couldn't work out the link. Some psychologists might be able to, but usually positive things happen in your life professionally as well. Do you know what I mean? When you're looking after yourself. I know The Rock, the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson said that was one thing that was always drummed into him, even when they were poor. They had to look after themselves and be healthy. And he's going to be the president of America at some point, isn't he? So, you know.
Oh, let's see. That would be really cool. That's actually really cool.
Oh, that's what I want.
I think and you know, I'll be honest, I'm really happy that you've spoken on this as well, and you in particular, just because one thing I have noticed is, you know, I think we attribute every ill or every kind of, I suppose, vice to the fact that people are poor, right? So we say that, oh, someone stole, or someone's a thief, or someone's like this because they're poor, someone's obese because they're poor, someone's this, and I'm like, listen. And these are people that don't get it, right? If you grew up in a stable household with a mother and father, and you had a good family upbringing, and you had good sort of social ties, the fact that you were lower class, economically speaking, really doesn't doesn't play a factor in that. And the reason why I can see that is because I grew up in that sort of, in a country like that, right? And the fact that if being poor was a prerequisite to committing crime or having to deal with all these sorts of vices, then developing countries are screwed. Right, but they actually have the strongest social ties. In many places, they have really low levels of crime, and if it is, it's usually petty crime. And it's because you know, culture and society and social bonds are a far bigger predictor of you know, future behavior than, say, just not having means. Right, money is just a tool. But if you don't know what to do with it, I think most people don't deserve to be rich, because I don't think they know what to do with it. I don't think they have the mindset to be rich. Most people that win the lottery are broke within 5 years. You know, that should.
Yeah, I think if I was younger, talking about the lottery, I think when I was younger, if I'd got a lottery win, I probably would have killed myself somehow.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it wouldn't have taken long. Yeah, I wouldn't have been prepared for it. And do you know what? Still, and this goes back to the education thing, that you don't get taught what's important. I have not got a clue about finances, and people, you know, people have tried to sit me down and explain stuff to me. I'm never going to buy a house. I've got a sort of council house, which I'm very grateful for. But when people have tried to explain how a mortgage works to me, I can't get it into my head. I do not understand finances at all. And that's all from school. That's because instead of teaching me maths, which I already knew, why wasn't people teaching me like finances and credit and the importance of things like that?
Because you'd wake up to the system.
I've woke up to the system. Well, I was never part of the system. I always hated the system, Esther. And the system let me down. So fuck the system is the moral behind that story. Excuse my language. Are you still there? You're frozen.
Yeah, you sound police.
Oh. Sorry, I'm just waiting for my. I've got some gremlins. I've had loads of technical gremlins today, including the power cut from your end. And I've now got some sound issues going on. But I think we've made it to the end anyway.
Yay!
So I just want to say thank you for coming on, and I've enjoyed the conversation, and
really enjoyed it.
Who knows? Maybe we do it again sometime.
Yeah, just let me know. Next time I'll do it with Russell. Oh my gosh, he would love to talk. He's a property guy, right? So he can.
Can you hear me properly at the moment?
I can hear you, yeah.
Oh, right. Hopefully this sounds all right. I've got all sorts going on my end. But yeah, anyway, thank you for coming on the Outside In podcast. I am going to click the end broadcast there. And until the next time. Oh, hang on. Actually, this is a bit where I have to tell people, if you like the content, please press subscribe. And I never do it. If you notice, I haven't done it once. I always forget. And that's probably why I've got so few subscribers. But I only do this because I like talking to people. So that all works itself out in the end, doesn't it? Right. Anyway, I'm going to end broadcast. Bye, everybody.